I read some more books for my contemporary writing class and I want to talk about them. I'm going to try not to spoil the shit out of these books, but I make no guarantees. With that being said, let's jump right into it. The first book I read was Disquiet by Julia Lee, and it's pretty damn good. This is Lee's 2008 short novella, and she honestly hasn't done too much after that. Now, I'll admit that despite being the shortest of these books I've read, it definitely takes its time setting everything up. It's very slow to start, but if you have the patience for it, you'll find a little book that packs a very serious punch. It follows a woman named Olivia who allegedly runs away from Australia to France to get away from her abusive husband with her 2 children. I say allegedly because it's never explicitly stated that her husband was abusive and that he is the person she's running away from. Also, she's consistently referred to as the woman instead of her real name, but I'll get into that in a second. Olivia is a sort of black sheep of her family, leaving home when she was young to marry her husband. Her brother, on the other hand, married a nice girl and stayed close to their mother. When Olivia arrived at her mother's manor, she saw balloons and party regalia. They were not expecting her, but rather her brother and his wife and their newborn child. However, upon arriving, her brother Marcus and his wife Sophie returned with the dead body of their stillborn child. And if you think that's the most fucked up it gets, you are honestly in for it. Part of what makes this book fantastic is how it plays with contrast. Olivia has gone through so much in her supposedly abusive relationship that she's trying to find any way out of everything. She repeatedly expresses suicidal behavior, going so far as to offer her own children to Marcus so that he and Sophie can take care of them. This checks out with the book consistently referring to Olivia as simply the woman, as to suggest that Olivia doesn't even see herself as an actual person anymore, just an empty failure of a vessel. This is in contrast with Sophie, who will literally not go a single minute without carrying her dead child's body. She keeps it in the freezer, complete with a bed and fresh linens for her to sleep in. When they finally try to have a proper funeral for the child, Sophie has a mental breakdown, steals the baby away, and runs back into the manor. Sophie's erratic behavior also exacerbates Marcus's own infidelities, as Olivia's son catches him having phone sex with his mistress. Now, despite this being the shortest of the books I read, it is very dense in the story it tells, and the climax is certainly one to be remembered. Lee was considered to be a sort of rising star in the contemporary literature field, but even if Disquiet is all she's remembered for, it's a fantastic book to have as your best. If I were to rate it, I'd give it a 7 out of 10, probably closer to an 8. The last book I read was We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, and I didn't really like it. This is Jackson's 1962 full-length novel, and it was the last one she released before her death in 1965. There was also a 2018 film based on the books, and it doesn't do it any favors either. I should clarify that I'm not a fan of much of anything Jackson has put out. Most everyone knows Shirley Jackson from her 1948 short story The Lottery, which is taught in high schools all over the United States and is honestly pretty one-dimensional and not very thought-provoking at all. Castle, as I'm going to refer to it, is about the last remaining members of the Blackwood family, those being Maricat, Constance, and Uncle Julian. Maricat and Constance's parents, as well as Uncle Julian's wife, were killed via poison at their dinner table one night. Constance is pinned for the murders, but is eventually acquitted. And now everyone in town hates them for some reason. One thing that Jackson seems to enjoy writing about is bitchy, drama-addicted small towns. We're not really given any actual reason why the town folk hate the Blackwoods other than because they're rich. They really just do because that's what our unreliable narrator needs. The story is told through Maricat's perspective, and wow, she's a major pain in the ass. You know that annoying-ass haunted kid from the Babadook that ruins his mom's life and acts like an annoying piece of shit? Well, that's what Maricat is like, except as an 18-year-old girl. She is so utterly obnoxious and unlikable, but I guess that's the whole point? Maricat practices witchcraft, nails artifacts to trees, buries silver coins, and creates enchantments and hexes for her enemies. You're supposed to get the impression that everything she does is for the good of whatever family she has left, but she's incredibly inconsistent with her behavior. At the beginning of the book, when she goes into town to get food and supplies, she's super timid and shy like a little baby. But then when she gets home, she acts like a sarcastic, spoiled brat. Their cousin Charles comes over to visit, and it's so fucking obvious that he only cares about their money that it's painful. His entire character is defined by his avarice, and it's just really boring. He's only there to make life miserable for Merricat because Merricat is the center of the universe. Eventually, some things happen and things are revealed, and it's really predictable and stupid. It sucks because this story could have been good, I think. But Jackson has a very one-dimensional mind when it comes to her messaging. She and her husband apparently faced a lot of anti-Semitism and anti-intellectualism up in New England, so that's mostly all she writes about. This is backed up by The Lottery, which is just one giant anti-traditionalist think piece. I honestly can't say I would have enjoyed this story, even if it was written by someone else. It's hard to like a story whose main character is so utterly detestable. I understand characters who are unlikable, but the audience needs to have some sort of empathy or connection with the character, or that character needs to grow in some way by the end of the book. But Merricat just doesn't, and she's still an annoying shit at the end, and I don't like her. This book gets a 3 out of 10. I don't like it. Don't read it. I mean, read it if you want, but, you're not going to like it either, I promise. That's all I have right now, but I'm excited to share my thoughts on other books I read in the future. If you like my input, smack that fat like button and lick that subscribe. Keep it clean for the kids, and take care of yourself.